Welcome to Changing Voices in Higher Education, the podcast that explores the dynamic shifts shaping campuses and learners around the world. I'm your host, Shamima Raihan Manzoor, a higher education researcher and educator, passionate about understanding how institutions adapt, innovate, and thrive in this rapidly evolving landscape. As higher education undergoes profound transformation, students and institutions alike are rethinking the value of traditional degrees, embracing flexible learning models, and navigating rapid technological change. With rising demand for practical skills, alternative credentials, and global mobility, the future of learning is being reimagined. This season, we dive deep into the trends, challenges, and opportunities redefining higher education from enrollment shifts and international student dynamics to innovation, risk management, and the evolving role of the 4 year degree. I'm thrilled to kick off our very first episode of Changing Voices in Higher Education with a truly inspiring guest, someone who has been at the forefront of transforming how education meets the needs of modern learners. Joining me today is Michelle Laurence, a visionary leader in higher education and lifelong learning. Michelle currently serves as the Executive Director of Programs and Partnerships at York University's School of Continuing Studies, where she leads groundbreaking work in learner centric, industry aligned programming. With over 2 decades of experience across strategic leadership, innovation, marketing, and business development, Michelle has played a pivotal role in reshaping continuing education across North America, from launching Ontario Tech University's first centralized unit for continuous learning to leading a globally recognized portfolio at York. She's been instrumental in driving forward the future of flexible, responsive learning. Michelle is also a TEDx speaker, the president elect of the Canadian Association of University Continuing Education, and was recently recognized as one of the most influential women inspiring the education world by World's Leaders magazine, as well as top executive director of the year by the International Association of Top Professionals. She brings a rare combination of vision, strategy, and heart to the conversation about what higher education can and should be. And I couldn't think of a better guest to help us explore the theme of future proof campus learning reimagined. Michelle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Michelle, let's begin with your journey. What inspired you to step into a leadership role in higher education, and what continues to drive your passion in this ever changing landscape?
So it's an interesting journey that I've been on. It hasn't been a straight path. What inspired me into higher education? I can't say I actually expected to be in higher education. How I got here, as I said, it was a journey through many different facets of corporate Canada and other organizations globally that led me to have different experiences and brought that into the space. When I saw an opportunity at Ontario Tech, took that opportunity. That was my first higher ed opportunity, and grew within that role, taking and leveraging the experiences I had in other sectors and bringing it into the elements of education that needed to grow. And so that being in the continuing education space, which functions very much like a business in the sense of how does it run, what does it look like, what is the product being the education, and then having true education within at the core of that and making sure it meets the needs of employers. And so that's where that connection back to industry comes into play. So how did I get there? By chance. What inspires me to keep going is students that walk across the stage, students that are changing their lives every day, employers that I meet that are looking for the next person to bring their business forward and or industry forward. And so that drives me, knowing that I'm helping support what could be the future.
That's phenomenal. We have seen student expectations shift quite a bit over the past few years. What changes have stood out to you the most, especially when it comes to flexibility, career outcomes, and industry relevance?
I think it's been changing for quite some time, but the pandemic and those years within the pandemic years have completely shifted, I think, the way that students are expecting. And I would say not only just students, the work world has shifted as well. We saw everyone able to function from home remotely in different locations. And so that is playing out in education now, where that comfort level of being able to study and or work anywhere still plays out, even though we can get back together and be together. And so that shift has happened and continues. And so the changes aren't necessarily to the education as much as the modalities and how they're consuming and where they're consuming and how they want to consume that information. It also plays into the outputs that they're looking for. I need to be able to turn this around and do something with it. I need to make sure it's relevant to the employer that I'm about to meet. So some of that has shifted as well.
And I also think that people now are getting used to with those flexible mode of learning rather than having in person and traveling and making it always thinking that it's difficult, hard to learn and to teach when we have to cross the border. But now it seems like flexible mode making this learning process like more holistic.
Yeah, I think there's the shift in the student and how they are envisioning what they can do. There's also the element of understanding what's possible when you remove some of that and go back to the ways. I'm very much a believer in being together and learning together as well. And there is the at home, and by all means, I'm the one who would love to sit behind a screen at home and say I'm doing it. But I also know, and I'm currently studying, I know the value of going in and being with others and working together and contributing and gaining experience and conversations that you can have just by passing. And so I think that plays a part in it that needs to be back in the minds of students as well. Not that it's gone in some, but in some, I do hear the students who call and say, I want to be online only. I don't want to interact. And that's not the value of education either. Like there has to be some sort of balance there.
Absolutely. So there's also been a big focus on adult learners and non-traditional students. What trends are you seeing in that space that institutions really need to pay attention to?
I sort of dislike the conversation of traditional versus non-traditional because I do believe non-traditional is taking its place in the non-traditional being the student who doesn't come in necessarily for the 4-year degree, but there's a place for that. So there's a place for the degree and there's a place for the non-credit and or shorter learning and micro-credentials and that type of space. And so the blending of the two and being open to the modalities as we were talking about earlier and understanding there's a medium between to still get the same output. I'm not sure if this answers your question, but making sure that you show value in both and bringing an intersection to both. So you might go for the 4-year degree, but then you're continuing to learn. And so therefore there might be shorter within your career, you're going to have shorter spouts of learning within. Then you might go back and do something a little bit longer. There's place for all of it. And whether we call that traditional and non-traditional or just learning in general, there's different modalities to how you learn. And that might change with your life. That might change with how you progress in your career and being open to that.
And it can create more spaces for all sort of learners.
Yes, yes, that's a huge one. I thank you for bringing that up because continuing education, non-traditional learning allows those who don't have the space for traditional learning to have an element and an outlet for learning. And I'm a strong proponent of experiences learning as well. So speaking to my own journey, I went to university, I did my 4-year degree, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. It took some time. I went out and I experienced the world and did different jobs and where was I going to land? And then I came back and did a postgraduate certificate. Okay, now I'm shifting my career because I knew, the things I had done I could do, but what was it gonna look like next for me? And so that postgraduate certificate allowed me to step back for a year. But for some people, that postgraduate certificate is the thing, or a certificate-based programming, a shorter program, is their 4-year degree on top of the experience they've gained growing in industry, doing what they've done. They may not have had the same experiences or opportunities. So there's definitely a space for that. And I think it's an important point to allow, if we want to call it equality or equity within the space, for everyone to have an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, totally agreed. We hear the term future-proofing programs a lot, but what does that really mean in today's context?
Being ahead of the curve, which isn't always easy. For us at the School of Continuing Studies, very much so, we're looking at being connected to employers. They're part of every aspect of our education. And so what we're offering in a classroom, the content, it's coming from employers. It's coming from industry. We're looking at labor market trends. We're programming in that way so that we know that a student is ready for what's coming. So it's not build a program and leave it to run. It's continually going back to that content and back to the employer and saying, are we still there? What are you seeing coming? Having those relationships with employers, critical to us being able to continue to update our content to make sure the student sitting in the classroom is getting the most up-to-date and future information so that when they graduate, when they're in workforce, they continue. Future ready also means it's part of the student's responsibility as well to come back and continue to learn.
Yeah, exactly. So when it comes to staying aligned with what employers need, especially in real time, it's no small task. How do you and your team keep programs connected to emerging skills and industry standards?
That's the connection with employers. So program advisory councils for every program. That means we have industry experts sitting with us, looking at curriculum, looking at the outcomes. Are they still relevant? What's coming up? The huge thing right now is obviously AI, the conversations around AI. What's it going to change? What's it's not going to change? And so that's top of a lot of our conversations. That's just one example. There might be elements of different roles that we won't know, but the employers will because they're the ones hiring. And so they're now looking for X with a Y. We built for X. We need to add in the Y. And without having that constant connection with employers, we wouldn't know that we're missing the Y. But employers are not only helping us build the content, but they are also delivering the content in our classrooms. So their real life experience is coming across with the students. And then we're also connected with them so that we can continue to update and go through cyclical updates on our content.
So I think that this will eventually reduce the gap between, expectation from the employers, from the fresh graduates.
Yes, yeah. No, it definitely is part of it because we see it all the time with our employers is that they are doing what they're doing and being part of the school and advising and being part of that element or in our classrooms because they want to be with the students to affect the change within their industry that they're so passionate about. And so it's not a new concept. It's just who's doing it and who's doing it well. It's also about managing that relationship and nurturing that relationship and really it's a partnership. And so if you continue to nurture that, the best comes for both sides and then ultimately for the student.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you think of a program, new or reimagined, that really clicked with both learners and industry partners? What made it work?
The first program that maybe is popping into mind is one of our newest programs. So is it Reimagined? It's a newer program for us, but it's digital construction management. So we see project management. This now is bringing construction into it, which isn't a new concept. Construction management exists, but now we've added digital to it. What does that mean? The digital aspect coming from employers in those conversations was you can go to construction management programs, but we're missing the new technology, how they look at different elements of construction in that role of construction manager or the roles that play out at that program. So that one has changed significantly because of the employer impact. If we were to look at a program and say, okay, they're hiring for labor market is saying we need X many construction managers within the GTA, it's one thing for us to build a construction management program that looks and feels like everybody else's. It's another to build it with employers who say, but they need to know this now. It's no longer the blueprint. It's now the BIM project. How do they use that technology? How are we training on that technology? What work integrated learning aspects could we add in so that the students getting tangible elements that they can work through rather than just being lectured? So it's really important to have employers part of that process that we can keep up to date.
So, with that, one thing comes to my mind. How do you see these interdisciplinary connections or cross-disciplinary connection into this, like digital construction, giving that impact?
It's important because that is what the industry is looking for. So an individual who doesn't have that technology could still be successful in getting a position, but then they have to gain the technology elements, right? This is teaching all of it together and bringing it to the forefront so that the employer now is saying, oh, you have digital construction management. The intersection of technology and construction, we're seeing the intersection happen all over the place. It's not new. It's going to continue to be this way, as especially with technology. How do we make sure that that's part of it, and that we're not just throwing technology on top of what exists? We're really embedding it into what we're teaching, and because we're hearing of how it's being applied in real world.
So it will also expand the horizon of knowledge for the learners, that when they go for interview, for a job, from the employer side, they also see that their mind or thought process is not into like one core element. They could contribute in a broader way
For
the
sure.
company, for
And
the organization.
in many cases, those new technologies are things that are brand new to the company as well. So now they're bringing in that aspect that they may not have or they don't have a lot of. We're talking about digital construction management. We could talk about digital marketing, any of the programming. You're using things within the program and tools and aspects that it may not be the same tool that you're using when you get hired at X company, but you know about that type of tool. You basically have a portfolio of opportunity because you have what you've learned and can apply it in a certain way.
Exactly. Partnerships are clearly a big part of your approach. In your view, what makes a partnership not just effective but sustainable in higher education?
It's a funny question only because I have this conversation around partnerships and I see a partnership as a relationship. We're talking about work. We have relationships in life. We have relationships that makes human society work, right? And why I say it's funny is because it's no different than any other relationship. There's trust, there's value, there's output. What are you getting out of the relationship? And a true partnership is both sides gaining something or fulfilling something, and you have value that's coming out of that, and your needs are met by whatever that partnership is. And so for us at the school, quite honestly throughout my life, a partnership, a network, any aspect of that it's not transactional, it's a relationship, it's a meaning, there's a purpose behind it, and as long as everybody's gaining out of that, there's a value to it. It's very important because if I'll use the employer example again, if an employer is not getting something from us, why are they working with the school? Why are they at the school? Why are they providing their energy to our content or our programming? They are doing it for a reason. They're trying to build their sector with students who become employees. For us, we want to offer education that is valuable and that a student can then become successful. Those meet together to become very, very successful. And that's a partnership that truly grows and blossoms because both sides have a passion and a value and a trust in each other to do ultimately what they need for the student who becomes the employee.
And I also think that this comes from that mutual respect, mutual goals,
Yes.
how it can collide
Exactly.
within the parties.
Yeah. We both, in the employer and school perspective, we both want to see a student succeed and get employed and grow. And we're just coming from different angles. And so when we work together and partner together, we can succeed together. Neither one of us can do it on our own. Right? So
Yeah, exactly. So are there any cross-sector collaborations or creative partnerships you have seen that you think more institutions could learn from?
not necessarily. I think that we need to see more of silos broken down. I think working in the education sector and looking at other sectors. So there's government, there's industry, there's education. How are we working together, again, through partnership, through mutual respect, for the purpose of economy, for students, for employability, for all of that? How do we work together? And I think we do to some extent, but at some points there is that need for us to have more collaboration, more conversation to understand how we function together versus education is doing their thing, whether it's higher education, any education, doing this for the purpose of what we think we need to get, the output needs to be, or government making regulations with, what they think is best. How are we going to talk? Are we going to have those conversations together so that we can do it together rather than in our silos? Same goes with industry. And I mean, most of this I've talked about employers, but again, if we're not working together, the employer's not getting the student who's ready to be employed. And we aren't producing a student that's ready to be employed. Like it goes both ways. I think that all sectors need to open the doors to more conversation.
So this sort of cross-sector collaborations or partnership, do you think it has impact on the community?
I think it definitely affects international. We serve a lot of international students through the School of Continuing Studies. And government regulations have changed over the last year, and things have definitely changed. And so it's affecting the community in the sense of how we collaborate with helping students, international students, get to where they want to be. And so being able to have those cross sections of conversation and those silos again to make sure we're serving that population in the right way. And that's a segment of the population in the community that you speak of. We want to make sure that we are wrapping around the international students that are coming in, that we're serving them the best that we can. It goes for domestic students as well. But just speaking of that with the government connection, there is the international students that are coming, are still part of our community, are not just students. They are building a future for themselves. And so what can we do to ease that transition, make sure that they're supported all the way through, that they understand the culture of Canada and what we're doing and some of those nuances. Like we throw a lot of events at the School of Continuing Studies just for that purpose, because it gets lonely being an international student. And we want to make sure that if we're having those cross sections with government and employers even understanding that segment that's coming in and what their backgrounds are, that they can provide so much more value to the economy and to the community, to the employer, those conversations need to happen for the value of the community. That's going back to your previous question, but to speak to community a little bit, that's where I would say is there's definitely cross-section needs to happen to strengthen that.
Yeah, exactly. So you lead a diverse team across areas like recruitment, programming, and strategic growth. What has that experience been like? Any key challenges or lessons along the way?
Yeah, I love my team. So, I mean, challenges will happen anywhere you go. Everybody is open to new ideas. And my team, it's bring ideas. Innovation is key. We can't stay stagnant. So the differences between the ways that people think and embody and take in information and output information is the true value of diversity of thought. And so if we can continue to make that an open space, and that's what I hope for my team, is it's an open space to have those conversations. You never know what one thought can trigger in another person. And so I won't say it's challenging in the sense of, there's no right or wrong. It's let's dissect every conversation. Let's be open to innovation and thought and diversity of thought so that we will together build something even stronger. So do I see challenges day to day? There are definitely challenges. On a whole, no, because everybody's bringing value to that team.
Yeah, agreed. So turning vision into action in a complex institution is no small feat. What strategies have helped you bring your ideas to life?
The team, a strong leadership team, a strong team, period, at the School of Continuing Studies. It's not just my vision, it's the vision of many. And so we together work on every idea. I'm actually just coming from a conversation where, we roll out a plan for the year or for the next few years, and how are we going to get there? And being ready to pivot if we need to. So if, we roll out a plan and things change and announcements are made or whatever might happen in the world, we might need to pivot. And together we will make that change versus one person saying, this is what we're doing and we move on. It's together. How do we get to that point? And so it's important to continue to have the team driving the collaboration to bring all of that together.
It's like a team cohesion, that how strong it is to,
Yeah.
think anything, plan anything new.
Well, that definitely is it. And I mean, it's one thing to sit in a room of executives and have ideas and things, but there's a whole team behind that. My idea on the table may not be actionable. My idea might be great in my mind, but when we sit down and start having more communication, more collaboration, well, how is this going to work? How would that function? How do you operationalize that? That's when things start coming together and saying, okay, well, maybe that's not going to be the answer, but maybe we tweak it this way. And that can go for brand new or existing, right? So we're talking about programming that needs to be updated. We need to add in new content. The employer's saying X needs to be added in. How are we going to do that? And is it going to make sense for the student? And that's gathering data and having that information to back up what you're doing as well. So it's not just a room of individuals making decisions. What are our employers saying? What are our students saying? Everything that we do is about our community and what and how we are serving them.
That's fantastic. Looking ahead, 5 to 10 years, what do you see for the future of Canada's post-secondary landscape?
I don't know about 5 days from now, much less 5 to 10 years from now, but it's going through a transition right now. It's definitely a transitionary time. There's a need for that collaboration. There's a need for conversation. The 5 to 10 years from now, it's not just education as a whole. There's industry is changing. Technology is changing. AI is going to revolutionize different sectors. Do I think higher education will look different in 5 to 10 years? For sure. Do I think that one of your initial questions, the non-traditional and traditional, I think we're going to see them start to emerge a little bit more. Do I think employers may be looking at it from a different lens in the near future in terms of what they're looking for from an employee? That might start to shift because people are moving like so fast. And it's fast education isn't necessarily the right education, in my opinion. You don't sit in a classroom for a day and think you've gained all the knowledge, but there's value in the experiences that you gain from some of those things. And then there's different value from longer education. There's different value from certificate versus degree. And so I think employers are now starting to understand, as the micro-credentialing and all of this that's come in recent years, is what is that? We think they understand it. They may not understand to the extent that we do within higher education. The differences are in different modalities and all of that. But employers will start to drive more of what the output needs to be. That's my opinion. And that's where you'll start to see the traditional and non-traditional start to merge.
So it seems like the higher education institutions or post-secondary institutions or the educators, the higher education leaders, they have to have that mindset to accept, to embrace the changes along the way.
Yeah, I would say so. I think anyone, but higher education for sure, the changes are coming, or they're here in some cases. I don't think it changes the value of any of the offerings. It just changes how it's being accepted. And so we need to be ready to meet the needs of the student. And so if we have students wanting to be online, we talked about this a little bit earlier, if that's what we're seeing the shift to, I'm not saying put everything online, because I also spoke to the value of being in person, but we now have to explain why there's value in that. Whereas before it was everybody sit in a large lecture hall and be lectured at. That's good for certain modalities. That's good for certain learning. It's not good for every learner. And in the world that I live in right now and work in, it's adult education, and that's not how adults learn. And so having work integrated learning, bringing that into, or experiential education within every program is important at the School of Continuing Studies, because you're coming with some experience. Now, how do I apply what I learned so I can go out and actually do it? And the employer wants to know that they can do it. Does that happen in all education? Maybe it should be. Is that where the intersection comes from, traditional to non-traditional? Not doing away with any of it, but bringing them together to serve the student in a different way. There needs to be a willingness to explore that. And I believe at York, we are having those conversations It's not about changing anything as much as how do we bring all the great aspects of how we serve a student together to make sure the student is successful.
Yes. So, to wrap up, after all the changes and challenges we have talked about, what gives you hope about the future of higher education in Canada?
Hope is that we are having conversations. Hope is that we have students who want to grow and we have employers that want to be part of it. Day to day, we have conversations and challenging conversations sometimes. We all have to continue learning. So no matter whatever happens, we all have to learn. AI can only take over so much. I still strongly believe that humans need to be part of much of that. And so, and much of the future, and even with AI, AI is a tool, not a person. When we talk about the future and we talk about what's going to happen, I am very passionate about knowing that individuals, no matter what happens, will continue to need to learn. And we should be there to serve in whichever way needs. And if we continue to work alongside government and employers to bring that together, we will be successful as a country in making sure that whoever is coming through our doors is ready to serve the Canadian economy.
Thank you so much for your valuable insights and thoughtful reflections. This conversation has truly illuminated the evolving dynamics of higher education and offered a compelling vision for what lies ahead. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode for Changing Voices in Higher Education. We are just getting started this season, so stay with us as we continue to unpack the trends, innovations, and global perspectives shaping the future of learning. Until next time, I'm Shamima. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep learning because the future of education is now.